When I first purchased my Xbox One, there was one game that constantly stuck out to me: Super Lucky's Tale. 3D platformers are like my favorite genre ever. I will never not be drawn to them. Doesn't matter what platform they're on, I'll play it. And Lucky's Tale as a series had me interested since conception. It actually started off as a VR experience back when that technology was just starting to make its rounds, but as other games would release that further pushed the idea of a virtual reality platformer, the focus on Lucky was to instead go bigger and grander. Super Lucky's Tale released as an Xbox One exclusive in 2017, and now we have the latest in the new Super series on the Switch, new Super Lucky's Tale. In a world where nearly every game under the sun is eventually making its way over to the Switch, you may think that, on the surface, this isn't that big of a deal. However, there's one little caveat that totally changes things. That little word up at the top of the logo: new. This is more than a simple port. If anything, this is one of the most interesting cases of a console jump that I've seen in quite a while. I may have a physical copy here, but the team over at Playful Studios were kind enough to sponsor this video and give me a review code. Thank you guys so much, I super appreciate it. I've been excited for this game ever since it was first revealed back at E3, like out of nowhere in that one montage. That was pretty awesome, so I think this is gonna work out well for the both of us. Assuming this is your first time seeing what Lucky is all about, what we have here is a fairly standard 3D platforming adventure. You go from level to level collecting a whole buttload of trinkets and get your hands on a bunch of special pages as your main collectible. And all of this is done to stop the evil cat Jinx and his children, the kitty litter, oh god what a name, from stealing the special Book of Ages and using it for his own nefarious means. These are all very much tried and true formulas, so rather than trying to reinvent the wheel, this game is all about providing a super polished experience. Like, one of my favorite things a platformer can do is to have you do something different on a consistent basis. You got full 3D levels, side scrollers, auto runners, ball rolling challenges, totem pushing puzzles, which I just call ice block puzzles. To be honest, they show up in so many games and I'm always a big fan whenever they do. It's something that's done so well here since the level aesthetics and the playstyles never get the chance to feel tired. You're also able to choose which levels you want to tackle in any order you want by exploring these overworlds. There's only like one time when you're blocked from progression, but that's near the end of the game. It ends up making a lot more sense at that point why they do that. And the clover limit to get to the boss is usually so low, you can outright skip some levels if you want to. I'm not the type of guy to do that, but it's nice to have that level of freedom. And it of course also helps that Lucky as a character is just so fun to play as. He's armed with a standard double jump and a short range attack, but he also has a dive move, which lets him dig underground at the push of a button. And on top of that, it's also possible to chain digs, providing such a satisfying sense of flow. Honestly, I did this whenever I could. It never stopped being super fun hopping in and out of the ground as gracefully as a dolphin in water. So good. And whenever there is no soft ground to dig through, Lucky does a bit of a slide instead, which is also pretty satisfying. It's a really simple moveset that gets used to the fullest, and as someone who thinks that play control is a top priority in my 3D platformers, Lucky feels just as good to play as some of the best out there. Now, I do think it's important to highlight just what is different between our two versions of Super Lucky's Tale. There is that original VR game, simply titled Lucky's Tale, but that is still its own beast. Aside from the use of Lucky as a character, it doesn't really seem like there's a ton that's been carried over. Once you throw the word super into the mix, well, the plot is slightly different between both versions, though the core focus remains the same: stopping Jinx and his kitty litter, god that name still gets me, and making sure the Book of Ages is safe. At first glance of the gameplay, things may not seem to be all that different, but I can happily report that new Super Lucky's Tale simply plays way better than the original. For starters, there is now a freely controllable camera, as opposed to being incredibly limited. Having levels built around a locked camera is fine, but nothing rivals that sense of scope of being able to see this massive world that you're spending so much time in. And let's not get too twisted here, there are still plenty of level design segments that are ripped right from the original, but when looking at the larger picture, levels feel laid out a lot more naturally in the newer one. Segments to me that kinda felt out of place and random in the original felt like they totally belonged in the new one. A lot of this is based on the upgraded art design as well. Many areas that were pretty devoid of anything interesting within the environment have gotten a complete overhaul. Sure, the original still looks really good at times, but new Super Lucky's Tale definitely looks better overall. Content that was also DLC in the original finds itself right in the main adventure now too, with plenty of additions, which is really nice. I made sure to give myself some time to play both of these games back to back, and by doing so I got to see just how much of an upgrade Playful Studios was working towards with the Switch version. The heart of a great game is there on Xbox for sure, but it almost feels like an unfinished prototype, a game that needed some extra polish to really make great, which is what we now have on Switch. Also now there's unlockable costumes, which wasn't in the original version, and quite frankly, that alone makes this upgrade worth it. Now I'm no stranger to platformers. Dare I call myself a platformer connoisseur, if I really want to sound obnoxious. But there are elements of this genre that I do value above others. I think I know what I like the most out of a platformer, like charm. If we have charming worlds with charming characters in them, I'll play whatever you throw at me. Like, look at these redneck worms.
Nay, schnickle worm, weebishny wibble.
I'm all in! The characters in these worlds are pretty fantastic. A group of wrestling yetis, one of them very much clearly being a parody of the Ultimate Warrior and Macho Man, appreciate that. Just the most adorable ghosts that want to run a successful carnival. There's this bunny rabbit that starts giving you really deep life advice. That's not even a joke, this is actually good advice. Helping all of these characters out is a joy within itself. Anything to help overthrow our evil garlic overlords. If there's anything that really stands out as a downside, it's the difficulty. There were some technical issues back at launch, but Playful is addressing them with patches, so that's not really much of an issue anymore. This is far from a difficult game, not as if that should be a surprise. Each level has 4 clovers to collect, and I usually got them all on my first time through. There was this one level in Gilly Island where I spent like far too long trying to find one of the letters that spelled out the word lucky, and it was different than where the letter was placed in the original version, which boy, that was really fun, but aside from that, everything was good. I always felt that if a platformer emphasized fun game mechanics, it doesn't necessarily have to be hard, aka most recent Nintendo platformers. The bosses don't really pose much of a threat either, so that would have been nice, but at least they go by so quickly, we can get back to the actual running and jumping in no time. That being said though, there is a final area that you have access to after beating the story. Lucky's home, Foxington. Here we have a handful of brand new challenge levels, all of which have like a 1980s aesthetic and a basic tube TV filter. Okay, yeah, sure, I am all about this. Especially if you do this in the workout routine outfit, there's really no other way. The Falcon! These levels aren't super challenging, nothing comes close to Champion's Road in terms of difficulty, but this is still where my skills were put to the test the most. And sadly, the biggest blow of them all is once you complete everything, nothing happens. Yeah, for being a collectathon, there's really nothing incentivizing 100% completion, and that kind of stinks. If we're gonna look at this game as being all about the journey and not necessarily the destination, then sure, it's fine, but I do wish there was still something here as a reward. Didn't make the 5 to 6 hour adventure any less of a blast, so that's nice. New Super Lucky's Tale is ultimately just a super charming and easygoing 3D platformer that actually has me feeling a bit nostalgic. I know I'm not the only one who is hugely nostalgic over the GameCube and PS2 era of platformers, where we had many original ideas with solid production values, but they just couldn't live up to the big boys. Sometimes an original idea was more enjoyable than having a super polished one. And it is so satisfying to not only have a modern equivalent of that, but it's also really nice being able to pop this game in and do some simple platforming without a care in the world. The developers at Playful Studios truly care about this character they created, otherwise they wouldn't have spent all of the extra time to clean up their previous work. Let's be honest here, say what you will about the Xbox, but it's hard to see it as a home for the cute and colorful platformer. Dare I say, with new Super Lucky's Tale on the Switch, Lucky feels right where he belongs, and I am very excited for the team's bright future. This was actually the exact type of game I've been itching to play. If you're a big fan of fully explorable 3D worlds that are cute, colorful, and charming, and they're not going to cause too much stress on your life, this game is absolutely worth a shot, even if you did play the original on Xbox One. This is simply the best that Lucky has ever been. Thank you again to the team at Playful Studios for providing me a review copy of this game. I was a big fan of it, but you gotta realize something here. As the big platformer fan that I am now liable to pester everybody in my path until we get more lucky in our lives. You've done this to yourself.